So Basquiat became the youngest U.S. artist to do an international art show. He was 21 years old. I mean, this is fucking unheard of at the time. An international art show was reserved for guys like Keith Haring and, fucking Andy Warhol, artists that had established themselves as international icons of art. And it was just unheard of for somebody that was 21 years old to be doing international gallery shows. But he broke that kind of barrier for artists. The fame wasn't all it was cracked up to be, though. Basquiat became increasingly frustrated with art critics calling his art primal. So he was very aware of racism. Right. And so he would do these interviews and shit, and people would say, so like, your art has a very primal kind of thing to it. And he would go like, primal, like a fucking primate, like I'm a monkey. I'm an ape man or something. You know what I mean? And they'd be like, no. You know, he just hated the way that like they couldn't talk about his art without injecting his race into it, even though he overtly injected his race into it. So, right. You know what I mean?
And I mean, like, to be fair to them also, his art is pretty fucking primal. I mean, like,
right.
You can tell a lot of it's created in
described,
like,
it's described that way to this day.
But I get where he's coming from with it, because it's like, you know, it does kind of have like a racial evocation and shit.
Sure.
I mean, it's kind of like how they call Marilyn Manson a shock rocker. You know, It's like when you hear the same thing over and over again, he just feels like they don't get him or his work.
You're just reducing me down to a fucking buzzword,
but I mean,
basically.
You know,
and a kind of a racial
to his critics, you know, someone like Basquiat is an inscrutable kind of person. You don't know what's going on in someone like that's head. You can't possibly understand.
Obviously, a very fucking emotional guy. So.
Well,
of course. Yeah. And in that documentary that I mentioned, The Radiant Child, he talks about it actually has a clip of another interview that he did where a guy is like, you know, is it true that Anina Nosei keeps you locked in a basement and makes you there's this rumor going around that Anina Nosei locks you in a basement. He goes, dude, nobody's ever locked me up fucking anywhere. He goes, I come and go as I please. See, the thing is, and he goes on to correct this guy. He goes, you know what, dude? He goes, If I was a white guy standing here, you would call me an artist in residence, wouldn't you? But because I'm a black guy, I'm some primate that gets, you know, locked up in the fucking basement to make primal art.
Yeah.
You know, so he got shitty with people, but like I can understand where he was fucking coming from, because it's true. If he was a white kid, nobody would probably a rumor that he gets chained up in the basement making art like some ape.
Yeah, and there's like a slave connotation to that too.
Obvious.
Like, you know.
Anina Nosei is a wealthy white woman, and he's a poor black man. Oh, is it true she's got you chained up in the basement making art? And he's like, fuck you. No, nobody chains me up anywhere.
I mean, it's kind of a ridiculous question to ask someone anyway.
But. Right. So he became increasingly frustrated at his critics and the way that people tried to fucking talk about his art, and how it was always about him being black and less about what the art was about. So after that, it really like caused him to start making more African-American centric art, because he saw it as like a fucking challenge to these people. He's like, every time I put a little bit of this in a painting, people call it primal and say I'm an ape chained in the basement. So I'm going to just start making fucking African-American centric art. He started portraying black people in his paintings as having crowns over their heads, which is largely led to the idea that black people, you know, it wasn't, of course, the etymology of it, but it helped feed the idea that black people call themselves kings and queens now too. It was an early example of this in black culture. So as his star rose higher in the art world, he became increasingly paranoid that people were taking advantage of him, because they were in a lot of cases.
Sure. I mean, well, look, I mean, you make yourself an easy target when you're newly rich and spending money like crazy.
Friends become not so friendly anymore. Friends who used to be your friends start selling your art for a bunch of money and shit while you're still alive, right in your face, and really kind of revealing themselves to you, you know? So in the past, he would be struck by inspiration and sometimes do an entire painting in the street and just leave it there. And now he was keeping his paintings safe in galleries so others wouldn't take advantage of his kindness and sell them when they were meant to be gifts. So he had this happen so many times where he would use this unique fucking talent that he had to make a piece of art for somebody specifically. And then he would see it up for sale in a gallery. You know what I mean?
Right.
For a bunch of money. And he was just like, man, okay, fuck these people then. So he just became reclusive. And once again, it turned him from a guy that would literally paint a masterpiece and leave it on the street for somebody to come find and take home because it was interesting. And there are examples of Basquiat art that were left on the street that are worth millions of dollars now, right? So these people literally picked up $1 million briefcase and walked away with it. And it took him from that type of person who didn't really care to a person that was like, well, fuck you then. Nobody gets to see my shit until I'm ready to show them my shit. He stopped letting people come over to his fucking pad, stopped letting people like patrons walk up and watch him paint. He just became super reclusive with his shit. So he had a relationship, a friendship, and maybe a one-sided on the part of Andy Warhol, as is intoned by a lot of people that knew him, romantic infatuation with Andy Warhol here. So Jean-Michel Basquiat and Andy Warhol became extremely good friends, and he was a personal hero of Basquiat's. I mean, at the time that Basquiat was trying to make it as a fine artist, Andy Warhol was the leader of the art club, right? He was the most talented kid in the class, or at the very least, the most commercially successful kid in the class.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And also probably the best social organizer in the class because he was pretty good at bringing people into his circle.
Right.
And controlling who was in and out.
He had this whole famous place called The Factory.
Right.
Where he would invite people like Jean-Michel and people like Velvet Underground and Nico to come and like, hey, record your album here, man. It's cool. Make your painting here. And a lot of fucking amazing art and artists and avant-garde shit came out of Andy Warhol's factory. So he was this big art guy, and Jean-Michel was obsessed with knowing him. He wanted to be friends with him. So very early on, before kind of going back in time, before he broke as a big artist, Jean-Michel sold Andy Warhol a couple of his postcard paintings. He just kind of brazenly walked into a cafe where Andy was having lunch with his art dealer. And he said, hey, man, you want to buy these? And Andy was like, how much? You know, how much you want? He's like, $10 a piece. It's like, I don't know, man. $10 is pretty expensive. So he ended up buying them for $5 a piece. But that little introduction, along with the introduction to Andy's art dealer, Bruno Bischofberger from Austria, I think, either Austria or Switzerland. I can't remember. So here's how Andy Warhol described their first meeting. So down to meet Bruno Bischofberger, Bischofberger, cab 750. He brought Jean-Michel Basquiat with him. He's the kid who used the name Samo when he used to sit on the sidewalk in Greenwich Village and paint T-shirts. He was just one of those kids who drove me crazy. He's black, but people say he's Puerto Rican, so I don't know. And so had lunch with them, and then I took a Polaroid, and then we went home, and within 2 hours, a painting was back, still wet, of him and me together.
And this is that painting, right?
Yeah, so this is a famous painting. Jean-Michel painted Andy, and Andy painted Jean-Michel. So on the left is Jean-Michel Basquiat's portrait of Andy Warhol, and on the right is Andy Warhol's portrait of Jean-Michel Basquiat. So
you could tell kind of like how they think of each other too in this painting, because like his painting of Andy Warhol, Andy looks like this like brooding genius, and Andy Warhol's painting of him, he looks like this fucking insane person.
Yeah,
it's just like
yeah.
And you can also tell too, it was actually very rare at this point. Andy was doing collage art,
right?
And he had not painted anything in years before this work came out. So it was they clearly had a connection. Sure, nobody went back to the factory with Andy Warhol and got him to paint. You know what I mean? At this point in his career, he was doing the big Campbell soup can and, you know, that type of shit. So the symbolic relationship was not just born of professional ambition. According to those who knew the two artists back in the 80s, Warhol took an almost parental role in Basquiat's life. Warhol and Basquiat had a remarkably close friendship, lifted by a genuine mutual adoration and inspiration. The late 1980s would later become some of the most productive of Warhol's career, resulting in some of his greatest works. Keith Haring, in his 1988 essay, Painting the Third Mind, wrote of the pair, Jean brought back a bunch of much-needed touch of mischief that had been disappearing from the factory agenda. But he also brought an atmosphere of obsessive production that left its mark long after the collaboration stopped. So this is another work that Jean-Michel and Andy collaborated on. Of course, you can see the collage art style of Andy Warhol and the portrait art style and the kind of work defacing style of Jean-Michel. Andy Warhol.
I like the win $1 million at the bottom.
Right. That's a Warhol edition, of course. And Warhol used to hate making the art with Basquiat, although he loved the way that they turned out, because Basquiat would come, like Andy Warhol would put the Zenith logo up and Basquiat would come and cross out like two of the letters with green paint. And Andy would go like, what have you done to my like my beautiful logo? You know, and then he would put another logo over it and Basquiat would come and cross out something else and slop some red paint onto it. You know what I mean? And then make his shit right in the middle. And it took Andy a long time to start doing in kind. So he would come back and see that Jean-Michel had painted over something that he did and made something new. And so Andy would slap a logo over it. You know what I mean? And that's what Jean-Michel wanted. He wanted that direct clashing collaboration. And a lot of their artwork is really compelling to me, right? Like, it doesn't look like anything else. You don't see this type of shit in a gallery.
I like the homunculus in the middle.
Yeah, what the fuck is that?
That's
like a fucking
it's kind of reminiscent of the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood homunculus. How they kind of made him look.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, yeah, it is.
That's
obviously
cool.
this was made way before that. Then,
yeah. I mean, this is the 80s. We're talking like 1987, 88,
yeah, so like 20
89.
years. Could have been served as inspiration, though.
So in 1983, Warhol rented a loft in Los Angeles to Basquiat for him to live and work in. So he kind of went out from under the care of a Nina Nosé at this point in his career and started working with Basquiat. Andy Warhol was the most famous artist America had ever produced when he teamed up with Jean-Michel Basquiat on a series of paintings. This is one of them between 1984 and 85. Basquiat in his own right was an artistic supernova at the time. 20-something, wunderkind, as it says here in my research, now universally recognized as the figure of his generation. However, some in the media were suspicious of the artist's collaboration and friendship. Andy Warhol was accused of taking advantage of Jean-Michel Basquiat, and maybe there was some truth to that. As around the same time that Jean started using heroin and became increasingly consumed in the addiction. So, he might have picked up this heroin habit from the obviously junkie-ridden Andy Warhol factory. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's safe. I would say it's a pretty safe bet.
It's, rumored that Andy himself, who was known to indulge, introduced Jean-Michel to heroin, or just that Warhol put him in the orbit of other people that did it.
I mean, that's just the orbit of the fucking art world that exists around Andy Warhol.
This image here looks like it's almost 10 years ahead of its time.
Yeah.
It just feels that way. It feels like this is something that would have come out in the mid 90s.
Right? Like the kind of like mock boxing match.
Yeah.
Moxing.
So fair or not, the harsh reception at the time was not something either artist could shake off. So they did that work together, and we just looked at a piece, right, that I thought was really compelling, and is now they're considered to be great masterworks, all the work that they did together. But at the time that they did this kind of collaborative art show, wasn't well received by critics. Critics were just kind of like, oh, Andy Warhol's done, and Jean-Michel Basquiat's work is just kind of held back by Andy Warhol's old ideas. And this is just Andy trying to remain relevant by latching on to a hot new artist. And what they created was just middle of the road sucks and blah, blah, blah. Right. And it was really fucking, as you can imagine, we've endured such things. Right.
The slings and arrows. Yeah.
The slings and arrows of the artist. So
I mean, whatever. I thought it looked cool, so fuck them.
I mean, once again, they're regarded as masterworks now, but at the time, critics, as often as they often are, were 20 years behind the curve, basically.
Roger. I'm sorry, Roger.
What was that?
Yeah, I love how these fucking.
Oh, nothing.
Yeah, I love how all these motherfuckers.
Pretty brilliant.
They try to be like, we're gonna shape public opinion, and then when they fail, public opinion ends up shaping them, and they're like, on second thought, actually quite brilliant. Now that I look at it again,
genius.
I was in a bad mood that night, and I didn't really recognize the genius.
I stubbed my toe at the art gallery.
I had a tummy ache, and it really messed with my brain, and I didn't really interpret the work right that time. But now, 20 years later, when everyone likes it, it's brilliant. Yeah. Like, fuck you, bitch. Stand by your criticisms.
Serious. So Warhol died unexpectedly of cardiac arrhythmia at age 58 after gallbladder surgery. That's got to be a disappointing way to die, especially since Warhol survived an assassination attempt 20 years earlier.
Yeah, Valerie Solanas tried to waste his ass.
Yeah, crazy
for stealing her brilliant ideas.
Yeah,
he stole my screenplay that no one would have ever liked. Ah! Like, all right.
Okay. So as you can imagine, in this art community that Basquiat came out of, and to Basquiat himself, Andy Warhol's death was a huge blow.
Sure.
Their friendship at the time was strained by Warhol's passing because of this criticism that they got, right? Warhol started giving Basquiat the cold shoulder, and because he thought, I fucked up my own career now by bringing this, you know what I mean? So it tainted their relationship a little bit, but he was just devastated by Andy Warhol passing away because he couldn't mend the relationship. He had always thought that he would go back after he grew up a little bit and say sorry.
You're fucking kind of on the outs with somebody, but odds are you just need a little time to both kind of be like, I said some things, you said some things, but let's be friends again. But they never got that opportunity because it's like, he's dead.
Yeah. And a lot of people say
we died on bad terms.
That this kind of loss in his life it kind of hit the gas pedal on his own death. Jean-Michel Basquiat is a 27 Club member, unfortunately. So a year after Andy Warhol died in 1987, Basquiat died at the age of 27 in 1988 of a heroin overdose.
Are you sure he wasn't one of the victims of the war of 1988?
Well, they say in the media that it was a heroin overdose, but he very well may have been one of the many victims of the war of 1988.
90% of the population, it is.
His last art show before his death was considered quite morbid, but otherwise, Jean seemed like he was trying to head in the right direction in his final days. He had just bought a house in Maui, which his girlfriend at the time, Jennifer Good, said was the only place where he didn't do drugs. She was the one that found Jean dead in New York City the very same day that he had tickets to a Run DMC show.
Oh, damn. He didn't even get to see Run DMC?
Yeah.
Fuck.
So I pulled a video here at the end of this, which is basically it's like, I think it's 128. That's Andy Warhol's grave. There's 128 Basquiat paintings. We've only gotten to look at a few, and I thought we could just let this run and pause and talk about different ones if we wanted for a little while.
Sure, we can do that.
I love doing this kind of fine art stuff because we can actually show it. You know what I mean?
And I can pretend. I can't pretend I know much about art, but
I see.
I like it.
I like that one. I like the roasted turkey.
This one's called Mater.
There's like a camel toe going on there. That's cool.
We know this one. Yeah.
I really like this one, by the way. This is a really cool piece of art.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Cool story behind it, right?
You could definitely see the Grey's Anatomy fucking influence there too.
So this is his father.
Yeah, he tries to show you the innards.
Yeah.
On the surface, kind of,
So this one, pause it for a second.
Super
here,
Grey's Anatomy shit here. Yeah.
So he had this, and you can kind of see it here. He had this, he would write something on a canvas and he would cross certain letters out or certain words out. And somebody asked him in an interview, why do you do that? Like, why do you write something on a canvas and cross letters out? And he goes, because it makes people more likely to pay attention to and read whatever that statement is, because it looks like part of it has been censored or taken out. And so it draws attention by trying to remove attention. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Plus, you can like kind of, it makes you go through a little effort to get to the message. So it kind of makes it resonate more. It's like a fortune cookie. You got to crack open the cookie to see the fortune. So
definitely an interest in anatomy. Like a lot of his works, I've noticed he has kind of a thing with feet.
You'll see a lot more than feet, but yeah, he does do a lot of feet. The Grey's Anatomy influence is up in the left with that vascular kind of distribution in the leg. So you see a lot of other artists in his work as we go through. If you want to hit play, he was hugely influenced by Pablo Picasso, and
you can tell. Especially that figure up there in the top left.
Yep,
total Picasso.
These are some of the doors that he painted in his early career. This is a canvas that he made by just taking a piece of cardboard and stretching it.
This literally looks like a floor.
Yep. Just a piece of wood. He scalped
took a piece of flooring.
This is a detail of his refrigerator door. Yeah.
Cooking some eggs up.
And you can see the sneaker prints on this. Yeah. This is Miles Davis blowing his horn.
I see the crown there. I'm assuming that was from his crown period.
And here's played. His more pictogram kind of stuff. These are drawings that he would do in his you can see another shoe print on this one here. These are drawings that he would do when he was living early on in his career with his first girlfriend.
You can see something. You can see the cartoonist ambitions in a lot of this stuff too.
Yep.
Like there is
sports, opera, weapons.
There is like a cartoonishness. I mean, like that bird, for instance. I mean, that's like very cartoonish.
Of course.
Yeah, Napoleon as a like the
wolf.
Napoleon as a bird. That wolf is super cartoonish. I don't know what the fuck's going on here. It looks
this is like a
chemistry.
deconstruction of Grey's Anatomy.
Roast goose.
Really
pure all beef, dude.
Yep.
I like those little smiling faces, the weird little. Yeah, there's definitely a cartoonist inspiration to a lot of this stuff.
I love the fucking simplicity and complexity of this shit.
I love how it's immediately recognizable. Now that you've seen these, if you ever see something like this, you'll know it's Jean-Michel Basquiat.
Yeah, and if I ever see anything that looks like this that's not him, I'll be like, oh, it's Basquiat inspired.
Right.
If I remember the
there's
name
a good
Basquiat,
chance
which
you
I
won't
might
see
not.
much that's like this. That's one of the reasons I love him.
I've seen shit that's like at least trying to be like this. That's cool. Got like an Ouroboros thing going on with the arms.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Football
What
helmet.
the fuck is
He
going
found
on?
a football helmet and shaved
He
his head and put his own hair on
pubes to it.
It
I look like pubes.
That was his head hair.
Cube head. Ooh, that's a cool door.
Right?
I need to start painting my doors.
Why not?
I don't own my doors though.
That looks like a back of an album.
Yeah.
This one is
that would have been a cool lyric sheet. Yeah.
Yeah, that one with a bunch of stuff on it is called Primer. And it's got a ton of his symbolism listed off in it in very small stuff. It explains a lot of his influences.
Right. So it's almost like a guide to interpreting symbols in his art, kind of.
Kind of, yeah.
Universal.
I like there's like a thing where like you see like scientific equipment and then you see like crazy symbols all over the place.
Yeah.
And then you see cartoonish figures mixed with like ghastly sort of morbid figures.
There's like an African art kind of thing too to it.
Yeah.
Like a mask-like Nubian art.
Like mixed with Picasso.
Right.
Ooh, that's cool. It's almost like a Picasso-esque. Like,
yeah, he's got like fucking like teeth in his eye in that one. King Pleasure. That's how'd you know my nickname? What the hell? Hey, Scotty, I didn't know you sat for Basquiat.
So this one, pause it again.
TJ.
Pause it again.
Yeah. Sorry.
This one here is called Portrait of a Madman. And if you look at the famous self-portrait that Picasso did, it's eerie side by side. It's clearly an homage not only to Picasso, but to that work by Picasso.
And that's a depiction of Scotty, if I've ever seen one. I love all the little symbols, man. This dude looks like an alien trying to
I like how he does the teeth, too.
All beef. Dude, I want that hamburger.
Do you know who did teeth a similar way was the Johnny the Homicidal Maniac.
Oh, yeah. Jonan Vasquez, dude.
Yeah. He did a lot of those teeth the same way.
Yeah. Looks like Abraham Lincoln or something.
The Pinocchio nose.
This also looks like an album cover. Mississippi. This guy just like,
So it's going into his later career stuff here when he started drawing more black centric art.
Yeah.
Or at least his mid career here.
Jackson.
I love this shit, dude. I could look at this shit all fucking day. I would love to go to a big giant gallery that was filled with his shit. Dude, I'd waste a whole day there.
Well, there's got to be one, right? There's got to be like some gallery collection somewhere.
There's several collections you can go see, but nothing that collects all of this art in one place.
Well, sure. Because a lot of it was sold to like private people and stuff, yeah. So this is sitting in some fucking billionaire's house somewhere.
Yeah. But anyway, that's I guess that's Jean-Michel Basquiat.
Check him out.
Super.
Why do you like him? Why do you like him so much, Paul? Tell me that.
I fell in love with him after seeing the documentary that his friend made about him after he died.
What year was that made?
It was made in, I think, the 90s, the early 90s. It's called Radiant Child, and it's got tons and tons of behind the scenes stuff. It's really, really good. I think the movie might not have come out until later, but it was made, I think, back in the 90s mostly. And it shows a lot of his artwork, talks about his influences. You get to hear him very rarely talk about his influences and shit. And I just had never seen art like it in my life. And so I went out and looked for more, and every piece I saw interested me more than the last. And so he supplanted Dali as my favorite painter probably 15 years ago. And it just has has just kind of remained there. I'm fucking super interested in his life and his work, and I hope it came across in the episode.
Didn't at all. Passionless.
Yeah.
Passionless
I felt
episode.
like there was nothing
F minus, Paul. Terrible. 20 years later, though, if this episode becomes a classic, I'll be saying
you'll sell it, won't you?
I think it was brilliant. I'm going to sell a fucking what is it called? NFT of the episode for $1 million.
You piece of shit.
Yeah.
Deep bad pride. Deep bad pride.